Hello, welcome to Herbs with Evelyn. We are going to go over a particular herb today. We won't be able to dive too far into it. We're just going to be doing a little bit of an overview today. Uh, the herb that we're going to be talking about is Foeniculum vulgare. Beautiful herb. You can see it here. It is absolutely gorgeous. I found this photo that I absolutely love of on the left-hand side, you can actually see it, a particular shape of the herb. It is part of the Apiaceae family, and its common name is fennel. And for those of you who used to or still do eat this, it's a very tasty plant. And on the right-hand side, you can see this beautiful row of the plants growing that are about to be harvested. They have just gorgeous foliage. And you can sort of see at the top here of the far right-hand photo, it does, if you can see from the greenage, this looks very similar to something you might know as carrots. It is in the carrot family, and this particular family is very large. There's a lot of species in it. But we won't dive too far into that. I'm just going to give you a brief overview today of what I found, a couple key takeaways that I found while researching the herb, and the couple of the things that I have a personal story to share on when we get to one of our slides. And so this herb grows, it's actually it can be quite large. It can be up to 2 meters tall, so 6 feet. It's native to the Mediterranean region. Its traditional use goes back as far back as the Greek physicians, Hippocrates, etc. And it's traditionally used in Chinese medicine to dispel cold. So cold and damp, etc. So it's a very warming herb. It's not spicy like cinnamon, etc., but it is known for its warmth, and I like that. In fact, Pliny the Elder referred to this herb. He recommended it for improving eyesight, and that's awesome. So this herb does have, along with many other uses, it has a lot of different uses that we've used over time, and it does have quite a few traditional uses as well. It's just a beautiful herb. It's far more than just a culinary herb, and I like that. You can use all parts of this herb. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I think from traditional medicine, what stood out to me is they use it for bedwetting, and they use it for snake bites. So here we are, backache, bedwetting, snake bites, etc. Got some pretty photos that we'll be viewing today. Oh, here we are. So on the left-hand side here, you can see this is a very good representation of how tall this herb grows. You can see it's probably good for the back of a garden, not necessarily the front of a garden. It grows rather tall, but it is very pretty mixed into some other foliage, into other herbal botanicals. It is a perennial, so it would come back at least once or twice in certain zones. So if you can grow it, so it's always recommended to grow your own herbs. But these are some beautiful photos of a little bit of the shape of the flower. In the Apiaceae family, you'll notice that the flowers all have this kind of like a almost like a firework shape to them, where they come up into from a single stalk and then they just kind of fan out, and each one of those little tidbits at the top has flowers on it. And so this particular plant is no different. It is part of the Apiaceae, or used to be called a different name, and that referred more to its umbels, which is that top of the structure. And in fact, its Latin name in tradition, it was named for the Latin word for hay, actually, which is frenum. It gave rise to both the scientific name in fennel, but also the English name was also used in this way. It kind of that all traces back to this word for hay, and it is kind of a famous member of the carrot family. And so when it comes to the foliage, I liked the fact that depending on the variety, it's not just green like you're seeing here. You see green, and you're seeing a bright yellow flower, etc. And but it's also can be found in red and purple as well. Beautiful. It's native to Italy as well. Like we said, it's native to the Mediterranean, but Italy is where it's quite native, grows freely. And it's a common food that's eaten in Italy. In fact, it's known for it being very sweet and warm and pleasurable to taste. In fact, as I was writing this and reviewing the details, a memory came back to me because my family is Italian and my grandmother is from Italy. She came over with her family, and she used to make this. She used to make fennel for us when we were children and growing up, and she would slice it thinly and lay it in a thin pan. She didn't cook it; it was made fresh, and she'd put olive oil, and I think she put a little salt in there, maybe sometimes not, and then she'd layer it with fresh oranges as well. And so it definitely was a traditional Italian dish. And it made me think about that because it's native to that area. So I thought, wow, isn't that fun? It's a little part of a treasure, little treasury that I had. And here we are. It's known, for sweet and warm and pleasurable taste. I love this photo. So the photo on the left is just an absolute gorgeous view of what is really going on in the intricacies of these flowers. A beautiful photo. Of course, the bees love it. So if you can grow it, please do. It's really good to grow our flowers. And also, even if you're not going to be harvesting it, it's really good to give the bees something to enjoy. So here we have a very interesting thing about fennel. It is known as a relaxant for sphincters inside the body. So we have several of them across the body, and they're very important. They are very, very necessary to the actions of the body, especially keeping gastric juices where they should be, contained in the stomach versus anywhere else. You don't want your stomach acid being anywhere other than the stomach. It's very specific. And so with the intestinal sphincters, with your stomach, and duodenal, etc., we need those to be very, really working very well. We don't want them to be misfiring. And so this relaxes those things, and it helps in the way of a carminative, which is what we call relaxing to the gastrointestinal sections of the body. It helps to relieve gas or flatulence. It helps to calm and be a very, very calming agent. In fact, this herb is known for being very quiet on the system, not loud. It's not a loud herb. It's not to come in and cause a lot of ruckus. It's going to be very calming. And so it can be used with children and even babies. There's been a lot of studies on that. And so some of the things that it's used for are GI issues. There's a lot of different studies being done on different effects of the gastrointestinal section. If you're interested in that, we don't have time to go into it. But if you're interested, there's a lot of things about fennel. But it's also really the two areas that really stood out to me when it comes to actions with this herb are emmenagogue or galactagogue and carminative. So these actions are very specific. The two are dealing with women and issues with women, but also just reproductive tonic, being able to help tone and get ready for just being a woman in those areas. But it's used for also in a galactagogue sense, it's used to stimulate breast milk. And this is very interesting. So it has a lot of different uses, but those stood out to me, those three things, galactagogue, emmenagogue. These are some of its other actions. We have anti-inflammatory, anti-spasmodic. We do have diuretic. Some texts list diuretic actions. We have expectorant. We also have that phytoestrogenic. That's definitely worth looking into. If you're curious about this herb, I'd suggest looking into its phytoestrogenic abilities. And then here we have menstrual, GI flatulence, etc. And not just flatulence, but other GI issues have been mentioned in the text or in studies for this. Stimulating breast milk, that's really helpful because it's so safe to use for children. It's a really great herb to use for younglings, babies, and of course, always use caution and make sure that you're dosing correctly. And then here we have some additional photos. Here on the right-hand side, this is what I think most of us are used to seeing. This fennel, which has been cut from the root, it's been cultivated, and here we have the fleshy parts, and we have the stalk, and we're seeing the leaves. We're not seeing the flowers, we're not seeing the root. You can use the whole part of the plant. The roots have been used, the flesh is used for food, the stalks have been used, the flowers, I didn't find any research on the flowers, but the seed, the fruit of the fennel plant is, I think, the most studied or most sought after when it comes to therapeutic value. That's my own interpretation of the data. But we do have several ways to prepare this herb, which is awesome. I think that it's nice to have different ways of preparing versus limitations to that. So we can do fluid extract, infusions, syrups. The syrup would be kind of nice for children, and then a tinctured form, which of course is that mixture of alcohol to extract the higher level of constituent. And of course, if you are pregnant or nursing, you always want to be cautious, but with this plant, because it is very, very safe, the thing that you want to avoid with pregnancy is you want to avoid using the essential oil. The EO in capital letters used to always get me. EO stands for essential oil when you're reading it in a shortened text. So you want to avoid that just because it has been reported to have some abortifacient attributes to it. And every time you see that, those are just always things you want to avoid with pregnancy. And that should be no surprise there. And then, of course, also caution with anticoagulants. So when you're taking an herb, you want to make sure that you're not mixing too many constituents all in one piece together. If one herb is an anticoagulant, you don't want to be mixing it with two or three other herbs that also are anticoagulants. You want to kind of be careful with that. And this herb does sort of symbolize a little bit on that anticoagulant side. It may not be this main action, but it does tend to have a little bit of that inference in there. And so, like I said, we are going very quickly into this section of fennel, but I wanted to share some tidbits and some things that I thought were really fascinating about this herb. Always, 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 there's so much more that we could share. We could go on for hours about just one herb, but that was a whirlwind. That was a whirlwind trip, whirlwind tour of fennel or Foeniculum vulgare. I hope that you have enjoyed this small and short presentation. I do hope that if you do have questions or comments, I believe you can leave a comment. But in the meantime, go out and try to explore your world around you and try to learn about the herbs that you live with and try to see if you have fennel growing native. It might be something to at least stop and take a breath of fresh air around it, take a photo, study the plant, and in the meantime, learn more about the things around you. Thank you so much for joining me and to learn a little bit about our beautiful fennel plant. And I will see you next time.